Representative Bowman. We're so glad to have you join us here at the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus, Yonkers Chapter. We are delighted to have you.
Good to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. We'd like to start off with sharing the mission statement for the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus. We are here to project and pursue causes or persons supportive of social economics and the political advancement of Black women worldwide. So once again, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'd like to share with everyone that Congressman Representative Bowman is here. He is motivated by a deep-seated commitment to addressing social inequities in our broken political system. Representative Bowman took his advocacy to the next level. He has witnessed the impact of school to prison pipeline, homelessness, mental health issues, a flawed immigration system, and so much more. He has recognized the need for change, and he has decided to challenge the status quo. We'd like to welcome Representative Bowman as he shares a little bit more about his commitment to our community.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Good evening to everyone on the call. Ms. Johnson, I have to ask, did you write that bio or did someone give that bio to you? Because that was a pretty good bio.
That was a pretty good bio. I do
Yes.
a bit of homework, just a wee bit, sir.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But anyway, good evening. It's really good to be with you all. I really appreciate the bio because I think it captures my perspective, my vision, and the way I think about the work that I do. Just as a reminder, I am a lifelong educator. I worked in education for 20 years before running for Congress in 2020. I started my career as an elementary school teacher in the South Bronx before becoming a high school guidance counselor and dean of students, before opening my own district public middle school where I served for 10 and a half years. I was raised by a single mom along with my three sisters. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I have a doctorate in education and leadership from Manhattanville College. And to the point that was made in the introduction, I ran for office because I became overwhelmed and frustrated with the continued inequities in our district, but also the pain and suffering that continued to happen with our children and families, particularly from certain communities. And you may have heard me say this before, but I always like to remind people that I'm speaking to. The year before I decided to run for Congress, 34 children died within the K-12 school system in the Bronx, and 17 died via suicide. And no elected official at the congressional level, state level, county level, or city level was making the connection between the life experiences of our kids and that trauma and stress and the policies that were coming from Washington. And that's why I ran for office, to do something about it, to have a bigger impact for the kids and families that have been least lost and left behind and historically marginalized. And while we've done incredible work to represent the entire district, whether it's financing for the Lake Owl Dam, financing for sewage treatment in Rybrook, an environmental justice project in Hastings, we serve the entire district. We spend particular attention on places like Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, and communities of color, because when you look at the disparities in the county, these are the communities that have been left behind. I'll give you a few statistics, but you all probably already know this. 50% of the homeless population in Westchester County lives in Yonkers, reside in Yonkers. Yonkers property taxes have gone up 20% since my opponent has been county executive. Mount Vernon's county property taxes have gone up 40%, while taxes have gone down in Rye and down in Scarsdale. When you talk about areas of concentrated poverty, areas where we have the most gun violence, those areas are concentrated in Yonkers and Mount Vernon. Shortly after I was sworn into office, a young girl 14 years old in Yonkers OD'd on fentanyl. So opioids and fentanyl continue to be a major problem, as does mental health challenges that continue to be a major problem in these areas. So I unapologetically, with all due respect to everyone, spend a lot of time and attention on these areas because that's where the needs are. That's why we provided $1 million to St. John's Hospital to help them to provide health care to Yonkers. That's why we provided $500,000 to the YMCA in Yonkers to help fix the pool that has been out of commission now for a while. That's why we provided almost $800,000 to the YWCA to help with the workforce development options for many of the women there, particularly women who are unhoused. That's why we provided over $1 million to the HOPE program in New Rochelle to deal with the issue of food insecurity. Overall, we've brought in well over $1 billion to the district through the American Rescue Plan, through violence interruption programs that I worked with Governor Hochul on, $40 million there, $88 million for flood mitigation in Mamaroneck, on and on and on. We've tried to deal with both infrastructure projects, but also the issues related to the social determinants of health and positive outcomes, like affordable housing with West Hab, workforce development that I mentioned, and education, working with the New York State Department of Education, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and New Rochelle. And so we're going to continue to do that work if we, are fortunate enough and blessed enough to win this reelection, hopefully with the support of many people on this call, because it is our calling to do this work. This is not our work. This is God's work. And I'm blessed to do it. I'm proud to do it. And I would love to have your support as I do it. So thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you allowing me to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you. It seems like you were going in a direction of one of our questions, working on addressing the environmental inequalities, such as poor air quality in Southwest Yonkers. Can you expound on that a little bit for us? How would you address that?
Well, more money is needed. We brought in several $100,000 to help with the Yonkers sewage treatment site in Southwest West Yonkers. That is not nearly enough. That's why we are pushing big, ambitious federal policy like the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal seeks to invest tens of trillions of dollars in our infrastructure in alignment with our climate goals. Right now, the infrastructure legislation that we recently passed are not aligned to the climate goals in the way we need them to be, and the money is not enough. So we've invested some money in Yonkers sewage treatment. The Lake Isle Dam is another environmental challenge that we've had to deal with as well. Sewage clogging up and treatment in Mount Vernon is another area. Rye sewage is another area. Tarrytown sewage, I believe, is another area. And also flood mitigation in Mamaroneck, as I mentioned, but also in Hastings on the Hudson as well as Yonkers. We have a few projects in these areas also.
Thank you. What would you do to ensure transparency of the results and transactions going all along the way for those projects?
Yeah, well, it is our job to over communicate. So we try to communicate with the district in a variety of ways, whether it's email, social media, phone calls, town halls, text messages. We over communicate in a variety of ways, but it's really important going forward to expand how we engage with local municipalities to make sure they are using the money accordingly and to make sure that we can hold them accountable with oversight as they use the money, hopefully accordingly. And so that was part of our learning curve. I've only been in office for 3 years. That was part of the learning curve that I came to understand over the last couple of years. And so expanding transparency and holding local municipalities accountable is the next step for our office.
Thank you so much. As you say that, I'd like you to share with us what are some of your goals to ensure that the community's voice and needs are met in this diverse Congress? It seems like this might be an area that you really want to shine in. And how would you work across the aisle with elected officials who have no idea, nor do they know about the needs of the Black community and the constituents here in Yonkers.
Yeah, well, there's some Democrats who also don't know about the needs of the Black community, if we want to be honest about it. But I sit on the Science, Space, and Tech Committee. I'm the ranking member of the Energy Subcommittee. I was chair of the Energy Subcommittee as a freshman. I think I was the only freshman chair in Congress. And all of our work on that committee is bipartisan work. Every single piece of legislation that comes out of the committee, we work together on a bipartisan basis. So I'm very accustomed to and used to working in a bipartisan way. My work with President Biden on the CHIPS and Science Act, I was one of two freshmen to be on the conference committee, and the conference committee was all about coming together with Republicans in the House and the Senate to make sure we were working collaboratively on that bipartisan bill. The same with the Safer Communities Act. We definitely work together on a bipartisan basis. It leans a lot into mental health supports for kids and communities, which are very important, and not enough into the gun control piece. So there's still a lot more work to be done there. And so we have worked together tremendously on a bipartisan basis. And I hope that here locally, we could work more collaboratively as it relates to some of the policies, but also some of the resources that we are bringing in. And by collaboratively, I mean with municipalities. We do good work with local community-based organizations. So I mentioned the YMCA, YWCA, the Hope program, the New Rochelle School District, the YMCA and Boys and Girls Club in Mount Vernon and New Rochelle, the Westchester Youth Shelter, and the Andrus facility, a children's village. We govern with community. Like that's how we govern. So when we write a piece of legislation, like take the Affordable Co-op Act, when we write a bill like that, we wrote it with the people of Co-op City because they know the model of Co-op City that we're trying to replicate. We don't do anything in a vacuum. Everything we do is collaborative. And that's why we have so much support from the grassroots in the community, as opposed to the big money in the community.
Thank you so much for sharing with such honest clarity on that answer. We appreciate that. Now that you mention it, all the different groups that you partner with, we'd like to ask, when receiving campaign funds from different interest groups, how would you handle their requests to support their interests?
Well, we don't take money from corporate PACs, and we don't take money from special interest groups. So we don't, because we don't work for them. We work for the people in our district. And so 80% of our contributions are small dollar contributions, meaning these are people who've given me $250 or less. So we're really always driven by the grassroots. We don't take money from any special interest, whether they're fossil fuel or military industrial complex or pharmaceutical companies or APAC or anyone. We just don't do that because we are, we're legislatively, we're one of the original co-sponsors of a bill to get big money out of politics. And two, ever since I started running in 2019, I've been pushing to get big money out of politics. One of the reasons why your television sets and mailboxes are filled with ads and mailers and misinformation and lies is because of the big money that has come into this race, mostly right-wing Republican money, and they are spending more in this race than they have ever spent in the history of any race in the United States of America, any primary race. And you got to let that sink in for a moment. They are spending more money against me in this race than they have ever spent in the history of any primary race in America. And the simple reason is because I've spoken up for Palestinian human rights. Even though they say in the ads, it's about me and against me being against Biden, that's not true. I think you all know I literally brought Biden here for a rally for Governor Hochul when she was running for re-election. And like I said, I worked with him on multiple pieces of legislation. It's not about that. It's about my stance on supporting all human rights, particularly the human rights of Palestinians. AIPAC doesn't like that. That's why they're coming after me like this.
Well, I love the way that you're addressing our question even ahead of time. we were going to ask what are some of the misconceptions that you wish to clarify or clear up on your behalf. And since you did bring it up, do you believe in an immediate ceasefire? Why or why not?
Believe I'm one of the leading voices
We
in the
need to hear
country.
from you. You sell it. That's what you're.
Yeah. No, I called for a permanent ceasefire back on October 16th in Congress because Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, they were using genocidal language then. They were talking about there are no innocent civilians. We're going to cut off food, water, and electricity. And they were using that language. And so we called for a permanent ceasefire then because we wanted a permanent ceasefire, release of the hostages, and a pathway to peace. And now, what is it, 8, 9 months later, we have famine setting in and what the ICJ has called a plausible genocide. And so it's a horrible circumstance right now. And this doesn't make anyone safer. If we're killing almost 40,000 people, 16,000 children, this doesn't, even if we were to get the physical Hamas, it's just going to give birth to other iterations of Hamas. And that's what keeps happening in the Middle East. We go from ISIS, we go from Al Qaeda to ISIS, and now to Hamas. It's not going to stop until we come up with a pathway to peace. One thing I did want to clarify regarding the advertisements. So, the ads are saying that, my, voting the infrastructure bill hurt New York and I'm voting against Biden. Just couple quick things about that. Number one, the bill passed. We didn't kill it, so it doesn't hurt New York at all. And if they needed my vote to pass it, I would have voted for it. But secondly, Biden's whole agenda wasn't just physical infrastructure. It was Build Back Better. It was universal childcare, universal pre-K, paid leave, historic investments in home care for seniors, reduce drug costs, increase SSI, and historic investments in affordable housing. It was stopped in the Senate by Joe Manchin. Our no vote was to hold Joe Manchin and the Senate accountable to move forward on Build Back Better, which they didn't, but we did pass the Inflation Reduction Act, which cap insulin costs at $35 a month, cap senior drug costs at $2,000 a year, and made historic investments in climate justice while allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. And so it was strategy. It worked in many ways, and like I said, didn't hurt the state at all. That's complete fabrication, complete lie. And I've never tried to cut SSI. That's crazy. I'm actually one of the leading voices in Congress on that issue. But they got unlimited money, so it's a lot of propaganda out there that hopefully that it feels like most of the people are not believing.
Well, we thank you so much for coming in. We'd like to share with you how appreciative we are of you respecting us and joining us to give your statements. And since you have given us that respect, we'd like to give you an additional time to go ahead and close out, coming from the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus, Yonkers Chapter. Share a little bit about going forward, where you think we should go and where you're going to go with us.
Well, I appreciate that. So again, thank you for having me. It's really good to be on. I hope to have your collective and individual support. We have 8 days left to bring home another historic race. This one will be historic because, as I said, right-wing Republicans in AIPAC are spending more money against me than they have ever spent, that has ever been spent in U.S. history in terms of primary races. And so would love to have your support. Please reach out to me. I know many of you have my contact information, or you can reach out to Louis to figure out how to support us in the last 8 days. It's been an honor and pleasure to serve the district since I've gotten in. I try to govern with the people and from the perspective of the people at all times, but I also govern from the perspective of history and the history of our country being rooted in civil rights and rooted in fighting for justice and rooted in abolition and rooted in good trouble, to use John Lewis's terms. And, I don't think we should equivocate or compromise as it relates to poor people, working class people, people of color. Black and brown people and our seniors. You know, it's been way too much compromise on that, and it's completely unacceptable. And the last thing I want to say is, you know, I think it's completely disrespectful. I'll just speak for myself. I'm not speaking for you all. That my opponent did not attend this forum. I think it's completely disrespectful. And I think it illustrates a pattern that I've noticed from my opponent. He wasn't able to make the NAACP event that was put together, and a lot of hard work went to putting that together. The NAACP forum that took place in Greenberg. He wasn't able to make an NAACP forum that was put together in the Bronx. And he has multiple times canceled on Co-op City building association meetings. And, you know, it's just frustrating because, you know, you can run ads attacking the first Black man in US history, but you can't face Black people directly in a forum to answer tough questions. And I think that's embarrassing. And when you look at his record from being part of pushing back against desegregation in the 90s, to not doing enough on affordable housing now, to governing over a county where 14% of the children are Black, but those Black children make up 62% of children in jails. It illustrates a bias in governance that is harmful to Black and brown people. And I think the harm and the disrespect is unacceptable, and it continues to be ongoing, unfortunately. So I just wanted to flag that and say that because I'm tired of it as an African American. It's really frustrating. But at the end of the day, I'm going to focus on me and our campaign and the people that I've tried to serve since I've been in this seat. And hopefully I'll continue to do that, you know, if we're fortunate enough to win June 25th, God willing.
Well, thank you again. We at the Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus Yonkers Chapter would like to thank you. We do have a few more questions, but in the essence of time, we would love to submit them to your campaign and give you the opportunity to answer them as we post them up on our social media and our websites. If that's okay with you, that we submit them later, and we'd be happy to post your response for all of our constituents.
Absolutely. God bless you. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good day.
God bless you as well. Best wishes and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you.